Welcome to The Criminologist, the podcast dedicated to educating and entertaining our listeners. We bring you subject matter experts from around the world and share the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. This podcast avoids stereotypes and biases in favor of the lived experiences of those we can best learn from. Now, please welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello, and welcome to episode 153 of The Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. This week, we are bringing you part 2 of my interview with Martin Bean. As such, if you have not had the opportunity to listen to my initial conversation with Martin, I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 152, our most recent episode, so that this conversation today with Martin has a bit more context for you. Martin will, of course, reintroduce himself, but allow me to tell you that Martin is currently the executive director of anti-recidivism.com. As you are all about to discover or rediscover if you caught part 1 of this interview, Martin is passionate about second chances built on higher education, which he feels is the foundation of second chances. We often speak on this podcast about the trajectories that our clients may be on and how practitioners need to better consider those trajectories in their interactions with their clientele. Well, Martin once again is going to show you how he does this in his work, examining both pre- and post-incarceration stages, and considers each of those experiences in his work. Now, last week, we heard all about Martin's journey into the criminal justice system, including experiences in the corrections system, specifically on the federal level. We are going to pick up this week as Martin has gone through the prison experience. He has now been released to a post-incarceration residential facility, commonly known as a halfway house. And this is when Martin challenges himself to take his experiences and leverage those for the betterment of others. So let's pick up my dialogue with Martin Bean, and I will see you all on the other side. Welcome back, Martin. For those listeners who did not catch part 1 of our interview just last week, why don't you reintroduce yourself to those folks, and we'll pick it up right where we left off.
Thank you, Joe, and hello again to your listeners. And we've had just a great response from the podcast 1, and so I just wanted to share that with you, Joe. My name is Marty Bean. I'm the executive director of anti-recidivism.com. And our main objective, our mission statement, is to reduce recidivism here in the United States. And in my opinion, the only way that recidivism will take a back seat is to the world of education. Without education, it's not going to happen. Just as without an education on the outside of the wall, your life is going to take a certain path. And now you have a group of individuals inside the wall who probably never had that opportunity for education and now have that opportunity. And so we're pretty excited about that.
Last week, we were talking about your journey into and out of the criminal justice system. When we left off, you had been arrested by the feds. You got to experience flying the friendly skies, thanks to Con Air, and experience
first class.
Yes, as we noted, mask or no mask. And you've experienced both halfway houses as well as outright incarceration from the federal perspective. Let's pick this up where your journey is at this point in your story. We are pre-COVID, I believe. You're approaching release from that halfway house back into the community, and you have a vision, Marty. You have an epiphany. Take it away.
The first thing that I realized in going into the correctional system is that everyone behind the wall is not a criminal. And that became even more apparent when I was sentenced. I was sentenced to a camp, what they call a camp, which is the minimum level of incarceration. And you realize that they just need a break. Individuals just need a break, like we all do. And they reached their own fork in the road and went left. Maybe they should have went right for whatever reasons. Okay. But now they're adults, and you can just see, okay, well, what are you going to do when you get out? When you're done, when the journey's over, what are you going to do? And, not everyone is negative about their outlook, and some are positive. And one point that keeps coming up is the word education. Okay, once again. Now, in my opinion, it's very difficult, more difficult, I should say, more challenging, okay, to receive a college degree or a vocational certification when you're on probation or parole, because your life is so upside down. One, you have probably very little structure. Two, you're really searching for a job so that you can have a meal once or twice a day. And we won't even get into hospitalization and medical benefits and so forth and so on. That's like out of reach. Okay. So when is the time to address this word education? In my opinion, it begins with pretrial. Because at pretrial, okay, people are trying to review your criminal activity, okay, and what do you want to do with your life? Is this the first offense? Is it not? And all of that, so that they can package you to go in front of the judge, okay, and then it's up to the judge to decide, okay, what's going to happen next. Now, in my opinion, if you can go in front of the judge and you're involved with any anti-recidivism programs, the judge is going to take a look at that. Okay? And if the judge is hearing that you're sincere, because the judges hear stories all day long, right? But if they can really, really understand that you're sincere and you want to turn your life around, incarceration is the time to receive your higher level of education. And in most cases, if not all, nowadays, post-COVID, there's no tuition. Or if there is a tuition, the tuition is covered by third party. That's how the transition has evolved in the last few years, last 10 years, so to speak. Okay. So that when you go to prison, it's not say, okay, let's get, lace them up and you shoot some hoop and get into gambling and all the problems in the gang and culture and so forth and so on. That's there. Okay. However, there is alternatives to it, just as there are outside the wall when you were growing up. Okay. So those, if you decided you want to habitat on cocaine in Maine, downtown with the guys, okay, you do that. If you want to hit the books and you're in the school, okay, and you're doing your homework and your parents or your supportive network, you do that.
I did explore your website, Martin, anti-recidivism.com, which I passed on to the listeners last episode, and I'll do so again this week. And you've touched on the fact about how your approach really begins in that pretrial phase for an individual, which I find a semi-unique, follows them through incarceration to post-release supervision, whatever form that may take. And I also picked up on something unique about your approach. Can you share some of your insights, Martin, into the coaching model which you've developed, which, as you point out, it's different than therapy? Can you highlight that for the listener?
I can. And, support, as we all know, anyone who has gone through the educational system, whether it's a 2-year college, 4-year college, or vocational training, okay, you need that support from a loved one, someone you trust. Someone that you can share your moments of questions and not feel stupid. someone that you're comfortable with, and you know they're going to push you a little bit. Okay, that's extremely important when you're going into this endeavor called the world of education. Okay, otherwise, you're going to be in trouble if you try to just go into an educational field, whether, like I said, mentioned a 2-year college, 4-year college, or the vocational school, without any support, without any practical, real love and real support. Now, what we've been able to do, and it's just fortunate, the technology has caught up with education. Because pre-COVID, if I spoke to someone, which is my soapbox, by the way, in case you didn't already understand that, if I began to speak to a DOC system, for example, Department of Corrections, or even the federal Bureau of Prisons, and I'm talking about laptops, I'm talking about, we won't mention cell phones, okay, but I'm talking about tablets, okay, and education. It was like speaking Greek. No one really wanted to hear about that. So post-COVID, the landscape has completely changed everywhere. Okay, and no more prominent than in prisons and in the Department of Education, which is all per state. A state system is all jurisdicted by the governor. Okay, so the governor now has the prison system known as the Department of Corrections, and he also has a Department of Education. Okay, and there's a problem. Okay, well, what's the problem? The problem is the Department of Education and their system does not have the student body in the seat. Well, that has quite an impact as far as funding. Okay, the lecture halls are more of a museum piece now than what they were really meant to be in the generation or two ago. So now on the Department of Corrections, you have this new awareness, this epiphany, if you will, of rehabilitation. Imagine that took this long. And this word mass incarceration. Oh, wait a minute. We have all these individuals in the bunk, and the school system doesn't have anybody in their seats. Perhaps we should talk. And so that's what's happening right now. So all of a sudden, the e-learning becomes a household buzzword and acceptable overnight. There was no pushback to e-learning. It's acceptable, okay, post-COVID. So the same delivery, education delivery, is now available in prisons because you don't have the security issues that you once had. Okay, you don't have live individuals coming in as professors with a good heart and as a civic mind and so forth, and they're going to make a difference, which is great. Okay, except there's one major problem, Joe, with the prison systems, and that is prisons are not built in the middle of a neighborhood. They're 50, 60 miles away. Okay, and so the individual says goodbye to his wife or loved ones and off to work. So he's going to drive to the prison and he's going to make a difference. All right, he gets to the prison about an hour and a half later, okay, because of the distance and traffic. And let's not forget the price of gasoline, okay? And the prison unexpectedly is in a lockdown, which means in that culture, nobody moves. Nobody moves. So the teacher has to wait, okay? Well, now the clock is still ticking. Okay, so all that energy, all that anticipation is now depleted. So the individual said, okay, well, we'll come back. Well, Thursday's another day. We can take the lesson up on Thursday. That professor comes home and the wife's all excited. How did it go, honey? What's it like in prison? And he looks at her, and he better have this discussion after dinner, I think. The dinner might be flying at him. I don't, who knows? And then he tells her his story. Well, try that once or twice and then see what happens. And so pretty soon the live professors that wanted to really make a difference, and thank God that there are individuals like that, are no longer available for service. Okay, so the e-learning is now the fail-safe mechanism and delivery for education, because it doesn't matter if the prison is on lockdown. It's not going to affect anyone or cause a problem. And it's handy, because the tablet will fit in your hand. So you don't need special classrooms or special space, And with our program, we only have, as far as an enrollment cap, of 20 students per semester. The name of the program is the Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy. Linda Allen was my soulmate. She was originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and a school teacher for 30 plus years. When I would visit Winnipeg, and we would be in a supermarket setting, for example, or a public setting, and it was nothing for individuals who now are adults, would come up, Miss Allen, hi, do you remember me? That's how much she was beloved and remembered. And she also carried not an air about her, but it was just a physical definition. She was known as the most prettiest, beautiful girl in Winnipeg. And her girlfriends, who are now past even middle-aged, would say, Marty, that's true. We had to compete against her. And they're still telling those stories. So, I mean, just to give you an idea. So in that vein, I, put her name to the program. The Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy is a dual semester. Each semester is 4 weeks. And we have 5 courses. 4 of those courses, the math, the science, the English, and the IT, will cover the 2 semesters. A different curriculum, different lessons, of course, but they will be standard for both semesters. Each semester will carry a single elective product. On the first semester, we're going to take a real good look at introduction, if you will, to cognitive behavior, which I think has an excellent fit.
Oh, yeah.
In a jail prison setting to begin with. And so we're going to have that in place. And then the second semester, the elective will focus on the SAT process and the exam. And the stress related to leading up to it, and the definition as to why it's important that an SAT exam, you have to do well at it. If you can imagine, Joe, I'm in prison, and I decide, I missed it when it came to education, and so I want to go to school. And I talked to a few of my friends there on the pod, if you will, in a setting. And everybody's encouraging me, Bean, you should do that. Bean, that's a great idea. You'll do well. All right, so I get a lot of nice encouragement. In fact, I may even be inspiring a few individuals who were silently thinking about doing the same. But they're going to wait and see how I do, and then that would give them an entrance, because if Bean can do it, I can do it. Okay, excellent. So after I get that encouragement, now I want to reach out to my loved ones outside the wall. Family members, friends. And now I reach for that phone on the wall, and I explain the story to my loved one that I want to go back to college. They are elated. Marty has finally found himself. He's turning his life around, and he wants a higher level of education. They're excited. They tell everybody that they know. If we have kids, if there's young kids in the household, the kids are excited. It makes them also want to step up their game in their whatever grade level they're in. And now they want to tell every friend they know. All right, everybody's excited. All right, now it's SAT day, and there's been no preparation. But Bean's going to ace that. Not to worry, Bean's going to ace it. Well, I got the test results back, and let's say I failed. Wow. Now what? Who do I tell? Everybody's going to be asking me sooner or later, so I have to, quote, get in front of this story. So I begin to tell them about my failure and about my dream that just went down the tubes. Now, even with more magnification, I have to walk to that wall, pick up the phone, and dial home. It's not received well. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And now I have to hang up that phone and look at those four walls that are around me. And now what? This is what the Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy mission statement is designed to evaporate that happening.
And in my opinion, Martin, that's what separates your approach from so many other traditional, well-intended educational approaches, is that you're tapping into the value of that social support, which longtime listeners of this podcast will know. I like to talk about the science of what we call the process of desistance from crime, but they know the value of social support in that process. And you're just giving another great illustration of the value added of social support in the change process, whether it's criminality or education. And you did a good job of illustrating it from one perspective, that is the student in that illustration failing and what that might look like. I would contend, and I think the science and the research is behind it, that shows that knowing that the family and the children and the nieces and nephews, everybody, again, that you pointed out in that illustration, knows that the quiz is coming up, will preemptively or proactively have an effect on that individual, those sort of invisible nudges, if you will, so they don't fail the test. So it's twofold. It's both proactive and reactive. And we currently don't have that.
Yeah, it really is. And then, let's say an individual is 10 years of age and just learned that his dad or mom, who was all geared up, ready to go to college, he was inspired. He's now doing his homework like dad or mom.
Yeah, it's the same.
And dad or mom failed. So what's he going to do? He's not picking up that book. I guarantee you that. Okay, and that's sad. So it is a domino effect within the family structure, and you're right. It's either going to be very positive or very negative. Mm-hmm. And when that individual is still going to be released one day from that facility, short term, long term. Okay. And now he has to go back into that same door. So is he going to be looked at as a winner or not? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is everybody going to be excited to see him? And if so, why? And if everybody has plans and they're not going to be here when he or she walks through that door, that sets another stage. And this is where the word recidivism really gets a very, very clear definition. I can't emphasize the point enough about support. Okay. Now I will share this with you, Joe, and this is breaking news, if you will, from anti-recidivism.com to you and your listeners worldwide. My team has been able to put together the ability for an incarcerated student, loved ones on the outside, their family members or just very, very dear friends, their support person will now have the ability, at the same time as the person incarcerated, going through their class programs, their lessons, if you will, and tests and the quizzes and so forth, to go with it with them. They will, for the very first time, anywhere in the world, okay, this is going to be available. So you can't put a price on that, okay? Because now the individual gets on the telephone after a lesson or a quiz, and the person on the other end of the phone knows exactly what they're talking about. It's not like you can't relate and so no, you know what was in that paragraph B, okay, and you missed it. Okay, well, no big deal. You went back, you reread it, and you answered it correctly. And by the way, with our program, there was a quiz at the end of each lesson, of course, and you have to attain a certain grade level or you don't proceed. And you do have the ability to go back and reread and take a second look at that question and re-answer it. Okay, so our program is, with the subject matter, is just not a curriculum just to have a class on math. No, we are talking about soft skills with the intention of readiness, okay, and the functionality, okay, of e-learning, and be able to comprehend, with text and graphs and so forth, okay, and then to be able to take the quiz. That's what Linda M. Allen is all about, okay, and their College Prep Academy. On the other side of the coin, let's talk about, if we have time, Joe, let's talk about vocational walk of life. Okay. Now, there is not a vocation in this world that I know of, and I'm not using the world, just rolling off my tongue. We have, clients and so forth and interests around the world for this type of a program. Let's say that you're a plumber. You want to be a plumber. Okay. And so there is a tremendous need in any prison or jail for a plumber. Okay, if you have skills like that, or a welder, electrician, also, you're gold. You are solid gold. Okay, I'm looking to bring in the vocational level, okay, of higher education with the unions, with major employers, okay, and so that they can, the student, the incarcerated student, can have a practical growth and understanding of what's outside the wall, which is going to be completely different than what he or she thought it was living inside the wall. Okay. And so that when that individual is released, okay, there will be a job waiting for them. Okay, they will have already had the interview. They will have already had the practicality. Okay, because the union reps or the major employers are going to be visiting their efforts through the Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy, and will also be participating in funding some of the tuition, with the arrangement being that the individual will come to work for them at a great wage, not a reduced second chance wage, but the standard wage that's available. And that is our goal for the vocational audience.
Which is so refreshing to hear. I want to back up just a little bit. I've been taking copious notes throughout this interview, Martin. I'm such a nerd. But when you were talking about your program, a light bulb went off in my head. Most folks who are listening out there, who are working for a correctional agency, wherever you are in the world, they likely operate under what's known as the risk, need, responsivity model. I was just in a conversation yesterday with some fellow eggheads talking about the definition of responsivity, but it's essentially what you've described, which is tailoring the delivery of interventions or treatment or whatever to that individual, and getting away from a one-size-fits-all. Dr. Guy Bourgogne, who's up in Canada, shared with me probably the quintessential definition of responsivity, which is creating the ideal learning environment. And when you describe your program, bringing in family members, bringing in support, again, sort of customizing it based on the end user versus the administrator, and again, getting out of this cookie cutter one size fits all, that's where you see results in any type of correctional intervention, up to and including, of course, education. So kudos for you to dovetailing with at least on paper, existing practice around this, where we should be going.
Well, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm enthusiastic about it. I speak to individuals. All of a sudden, there's a great deal of excitement, and it's helpful because I don't have to keep talking. I then become a listener, and then answer, specific questions, which is, great. But in this day and age, there is a lot of funding now for this direction, and it's all due to the unfortunate implosion of COVID. Because without that that issue with the education systems and the need. Okay, I'm not so sure the Department of Corrections would be as anxious as they are today to marry the two. Okay, I mean the Department of Corrections have been around for a number of generations. Okay, without even the word of education, no, it doesn't exist. That's window dressing at best. Okay, and we've had enough of that. Okay, we've been through that. Okay, and that time is past as well. Now it's all right. Let's make this happen. Okay, and now to put jobs also at the end of the rainbow, if you will, after you get your education. And that's where you just mentioned about it has to apply to the actual individual. What's it going to do for me? What difference is it going to make in my life? Well, when you get into dollars and cents, all money's green.
As an evidence-based practices trainer, I always cringe when I ask a question or make a proposal, and the response I get is, well, we've always done it this way, Joe. And that's when my head explodes. And you've been talking about the sort of not unintended, but the unexpected outcomes of dealing with COVID. And those happen throughout corrections, I can assure you, not just in the prison settings, but even when you look at the role of probation and parole officers and how they do their job, and how COVID forced them to re-examine that. It also forced them to re-examine the value added of those practices and say, well, why were we doing it this way? And to your point about bringing tablets in, that was a great illustration that, again, for better or worse, thanks to COVID, it sort of pushed us to have to do it that way. And then upon further review, it was sort of like, holy cow, why weren't we always doing it this way?
Yeah, no question about that. And the cost savings by doing that with the answers, the practical answers of a delivery, okay, are there. They've always been there, but there's been that resistance, okay, to apply them. And you're right, COVID changed the landscape. And so not only did it become obvious that education could be accomplished through tablets and technology, but also the way prisons speak to prisons and how everything is processed now in prisons and right down the line. Everything is electronic now. And, there's a newer mindset, if you will, age-wise and so forth, as far as, recruits, that are used to the electronic devices as opposed to not. I mean, I think bowling leagues are great. But, during 9 to 5, you need other tools, okay, to do your job. Okay. And this, as I said, the generation that's now coming into the employment ranks and looking at this as a career, not as just a bus stop, if you will, toward, something better, but as an actual career, they have those tools and they're used to using those tools and they don't know what the hell to do without those tools, if you'll pardon my French.
Martin, if there's a warden out there, or for my followers and listeners in the United Kingdom, a governor running a prison, as they are referred to over there, clearly I'll leave your contact information, but what could they expect as far as what scaling up might look like, or from their perspective? Maybe even the best way to answer that question is maybe illustrate a success story that you've had to sort of tease for potential partners down the road what their experience might be like.
We have a number of systems that are standing by. We're just putting our curriculum, the actual curriculum, together, and we're looking at different directions for it, if you will. I'm going to use the word I. Take a chance here, Joe. How's that? I'm going to use the word I. I am not interested in having an avatar try and teach anything. Period. Okay. I'm not. I'm just not. Right now, I don't feel the credibility is there, and I don't want to go into that, but it's not going to happen. Okay. So we're using live individuals, okay, demonstrating, speaking on tape, on video, along with the graphics to get the point that we're trying to make within each curriculum. Okay, as far as a follow up, people who are interested, as you mentioned, the governors there in the UK and my friends in Ireland and Australia as well, and Canada, of course, can reach out through LinkedIn. Martin Bean on LinkedIn. And actually, I'm proud to say I have probably the largest following on LinkedIn of any individual or organization in this curriculum, in this theater. And the closest firm, is company, if you will, has been in business over 50 years. And so I'm very proud of that. And the population in that group is about 90% Department of Justice related. It's just not anybody can get into the group. You have to be, in some phase, whether A to Z. Okay, judge, superior court judge, federal judge, down to correction officers, if you will, and everything in between. CEOs of privatization firms here in the United States, which we have three majors. Two are really the majors that are traded publicly. And then the third one is a religious-based organization from Salt Lake City. And so those three, they all have a presence in LinkedIn. I have the website, as you mentioned, that name, and we have the name. And I'm proud of that. I'm not bragging. I'm proud of it. Anti-recidivism.com.
You have been speaking of the Linda M. Allen college preparatory program, and I guess to further answer the question I just posed to you, you shared with me a short video. I am going to, if it's all right, Martin, include that web link in the description of this show to give some folks insights as to what you're all about as well. I know sometimes the medium appeals to folks on different levels.
Yeah. The video is about a 3.5 minute video. It's music based with text and great graphics. There is no voiceover on this, but you sit there, you read it just as you're going to read e-learning if you're a student.
Martin, imagine you're back on the show in the not too distant future. What do you envision we may be chatting about at that time? Look into your crystal ball.
I would like to say, let's take a look at the individuals, the students, incarcerated students who have gone through the program and what their thoughts are. And how many in going through that have gone on now to a higher education and why? Will they credit the Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy for it, for their confidence? They reduced the fear, okay, the procrastination. They actually took the step. And, we want to listen to see if did they have any friends? Did it affect any of their cellmates as well? Or how about their family? How are the kids doing? Did you notice the kids' grades just somehow went from D to B and maybe an A now and then? Okay. How did that make you feel by being behind the wall and hearing now that your son or daughter is doing well in school? What do you think caused that? That's what we want to hear about.
What a great answer, Martin. I could have you could have replied with, well, we'll be looking at these graduation rates or this decrease in violence or this or that, but you went much broader and again talked about how the bigger societal gains from this, whether it's family members, cellmates, other collateral contacts. So kudos to you for having that infinite mindset and looking at the big picture here, which I know is really where your heart is at, which I really appreciate about you, Martin.
Well, thanks, Joe. It really is. And that's what makes the difference. And only that point is going to, in real time, reduce the numbers that define the word recidivism in the United States.
Could not agree more, Martin. I could not agree more. Martin Bean of anti-recidivism.com. I'm not going to say goodbye, my friend. I'll say until next time.
Thanks, Joe. Nice to be with you always.
Thanks, Martin.
Bye now.
A big Criminologist podcast thank you to Martin Bean for being on the program not once, but twice to talk all about his efforts around lowering recidivism via higher education. As promised, I have left links in the program description of this episode for anti-recidivism.com, as well as a short video highlighting the Linda M. Allen College Prep Academy. So check out those and other useful links in the program description. Hey, I am excited to announce that I will be delivering the keynote address in Sydney, Australia for the Probation and Community Corrections Officers Association. This year's theme is Advancing Community Corrections, Vision and Innovation. I want to thank Tammy Lewis for making this all happen. Tammy is a longtime listener of the podcast. Tammy is a training officer with Northern Territory Correctional Services in Bakewell, Australia. Tammy got the ball rolling on this, and thanks to her and other folks, such as Daniel Lang, I will be traveling to Australia in October. I should point out, Daniel Lang is with the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice down in Sydney. To you both, updates will be forthcoming, but I encourage any of my listeners in Australia or New Zealand, if you have the means, let's connect for the Probation and Community Corrections Officers Association National Conference, Sydney, Australia, October 2023. Back next week with a fresh episode. Dr. Jared Brown will be returning to the program to profile infamous serial killer Fred West. You don't want to miss that episode. And in the coming weeks, I am very excited to announce I will be joined by Yana Sparrow and Juliana Carbonero, joining us from Europe to talk all about their roles with the Confederation of European Probation. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, the Paragon Group, LLC.com, for training or presentations as to core correctional skills, implementation, program design, or, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Criminologist Podcast. New, fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. The Criminologist Media Group is also on Twitter. Give us a follow at Crim Media Group. That's CRIM Media Group. You may also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn, and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Hey, lastly, if you've not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this podcast. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word, tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us, ask them to subscribe to the podcast, and of course, do so yourself if you've not already done so. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
You need that support from a loved one, someone you trust, someone that you can share your moments of questions and not feel stupid. Someone that you're comfortable with and you know they're going to push you a little bit. Okay. That's extremely important when you're going into this endeavor called the world of education.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, or training opportunities, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more content and videos on our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Both the Criminologist podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.